Something I've been asked a few times recently is how can we do a backup to some on-prem S3 storage so that we can get that first backup or archive taken nice and quickly and then migrate that storage into a cloud bucket and then continue working from the cloud bucket. So I'm going to run through that whole process with you right now. I'm going to use the backup module, but we could just as easily and in the same way do this for archive. So I have a Minio, which is an open source S3 server running across my LAN. Minio provides a little web console. So I created a bucket called local test. I've got some access keys, so I can access this from P5. So in order to set up the storage so that we can do a backup to this Minio S3 server across the local area network, I go to my storage manager, to cloud service. So we add a new service so that we can connect. It will be generic S3. My service URL is going to be HTTPS with this IP, some copying and pasting going on here. And the Minio server is publishing its S3 interface by default on port 9000. So I put that in there. The access key is this, the secret access key is this, and the bucket is called local test. So I apply all of that stuff and then we can test the connection and it should come back and say it successfully connects. So that means that we can write data now into the Minio server. We could also do a compatibility test to make sure that we can do all of the upload file, download metadata stuff that we need to do. It passes all of those too, which is great. So in order to use this cloud service for backup, we have to make something called a storage container using this, and we click the add cloud storage button, even though it's not strictly cloud storage, it's S3 storage. So what I need is a local directory that we'll use as a cache on the way up to the generic S3. Remember, generic S3 is the name of the cloud service that we just added. I didn't give it a better name than generic S3. So in here, I need to choose a directory that I'm going to use on my local Mac. I'm running P5 on a Mac here. So I'm just going to go to the desktop and I've got backup container, what did I call it? Backup container test. And the storage name is going to be cloud backup, because ultimately this is going to be data that's going to end up in the cloud, and the name of the storage, therefore the name of the pool won't change. So we do all of that stuff, and then what we get is a pool called cloud backup that we can now back up to, and in that pool there's a volume, which is where our data is going to be written to this volume inside of this pool, and it's going to go to the cloud service that we set up, which is actually going to our Minio server, which is sitting on our LAN. And this object browser in the admin interface here will allow us to see once objects start being written. You can see currently local test is empty. So what I need to do now is create a backup plan. So let's make a new backup plan. Untitled is fine for the name. I'm going to choose to back up something from localhost. There's a folder on my desktop that's got some photos in it. It's called Photos. So we will back up that folder. I could have multiple folders in the list if I was doing this for real, and I could also choose to back up data from other clients across the network, other P5 clients. So that's all fine. Then I create a backup event. So this is the schedule of when it's going to run and what storage it's going to write to. So the target storage is cloud backup, and then I could say run it every day, whatever. But for the purposes of a test, we don't need to schedule it. We can just run it manually. So to run it manually, we highlight it, hit the Start Now button, say OK. And then if we want to, we can limit per gigabytes the number of data that we actually write in this particular job. So if your storage is actually that you're writing to, the S3 storage on the LAN is smaller than the backup data that you want to write, you can run it in multiple sessions and limit the amount of data that we write in each session. So we're going to say start now, and the job runs. Let's just close down scheduled jobs so I've got a bit more space, and we can see that we'll be writing these JPEG files. It's not a very big folder, so this won't take very long. Okay, so our job finished. It wrote 15 megabytes, and if we go look in our Minio console now and refresh, we'll see that P5 has written a folder in here called config, and under this folder P5 writes all of the data pertaining to this backup that we just ran and any future backups. We don't really need to worry what's in this folder particularly, but later on we will need to copy this folder to our real cloud bucket in the actual cloud. So I could go ahead and run other incremental backups. In fact, let's do that. So if I take this folder of JPEGs, if I grab them all and make a second copy so that we have twice as many JPEGs in that folder, I could go back to my backup plan, I could run it again, and it will run incrementally looking for new files or changed files, and then when that job is completed we will have captured the current state of that folder. Okay, so you can see it's saved the same amount of data again because we duplicated all the files. And if I go to my Restore tab, and then we can browse what we've backed up under localhost, so we drill down into the path that we archived, and you can now see all, how many files have we got? All 20 files are showing up in the list here, and we could choose some of these files and restore them. We've also got 2 snapshots in our backup, so we've got the backup that we ran a few minutes earlier that just had the first iteration of that folder, and then we've got the second iteration of that folder captured in our index. Okay, so let's say that we've backed up or archived everything that we need to archive onto this local S3 server on our LAN, and we're now going to get that copied up into a cloud bucket. So in order to do this, I've got a bucket set up here in Wasabi. It's called P5 Backup Migrate, and I've got a tool here which I use on the Mac that I can browse both the Minio server, and if I refresh this, you can see here's the config folder that we need to copy across, and here's the Wasabi bucket which I need to refresh because it should be empty. So here's our empty bucket in Wasabi, and here is our bucket with the config folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, in the case of this demo, I'm going to copy this back to a folder on my desktop. So that's just progressing. You can see the progress bar running across there. And once I've copied it down to this Mac, I'm going to copy it up to the Wasabi bucket. Okay, so I now have a local copy in a folder on my desktop of this config folder. I'm going to switch across to the Wasabi tab, and I'm just going to grab that and drag it into the Wasabi bucket, and that will upload everything into Wasabi, which is finished. Okay, so the remaining thing to do is to tell Archiware that this Wasabi bucket is now where the container data relating to our backup lives. So I go back to the backup tab, Storage Manager, Cloud Service. So this generic S3, remember, is the Minio server, and I need to add a new one that's going to be pointing to the Wasabi cloud service. And in here I have my access key, my secret key, and the bucket name, which is P5 Backup Migrate. Apply, no need to save, and again let's test to make sure that we can connect to Wasabi just okay. Okay, so we closed that one. So now we've got P5 connected to both the different sorts of S3 storage. So the remaining thing to do is I go to the volume, the container volume where our backup data lives, double click on this to edit it, and you can see there's a cloud service currently selected, generic S3. I hit the edit button, and there's a warning that reminds me that I should really know what I'm doing at this point, otherwise I might make a mess of things. And I'm going to switch this across to Wasabi and apply and close. So P5 will now expect all of that data to be in the Wasabi bucket, and indeed what I could do is I could go to my Minio server and delete the config folder, just to be 100% sure and show you that this works whilst that data is no longer there. I wouldn't recommend that you do this. I'm just kind of showing you that this is a better test if we go this way around. And then if I wanted to recover these JPEG files, so let's say that those are no longer on disk, that folder's empty. So I'm going to go to my restore from backup, locate that folder with the JPEG files. Let's say that I want to recover what was in there before I copied everything twice. Then I'm going to say restore to, and I don't need to change the directory. I want it to restore exactly back to where those files came from. So I hit next. It tells me that there are 10 files that will be restored, 50 megabytes, and our container volume is the one listed here. And then we hit start. So what P5 will now do is it'll be downloading data from the Wasabi bucket in order to recover those JPEG files. So that's what's happening right now. And you can see those files popping up in the Finder window in the background. So that job has pretty much done what it needs to do. So that's a round trip of backing up data to local S3 storage and then getting that into the cloud and then switching P5 so it's now using the cloud-based version of that data. Thanks for watching.